The curse of Lona. In the heart of the lush, green valley, the village of Kantu thrived with its vibrant culture and harmonious way of life. Yet, beneath the joyful songs of harvest and the rhythmic beats of drum circles, there was one house where silence lingered, the house that belonged to Lona and her husband, Jallo. Lona was a striking woman with eyes like amber and hair that caught the sun like threads of gold. Yet, her beauty did not spare her from the whispers that followed her wherever she went. Married for over 12 years, Lona and Jallo had no children, an absence that weighed heavily on their shoulders. In Kantu, where children were seen as blessings and signs of prosperity, Lona's empty arms were seen as a curse. The villagers called her the Barren woman behind her back, though some hurled the words directly at her. She endured their scorn with quiet grace, but inside, her heart bore deep scars. Jallo, ever the loving husband, stood by her. He often whispered, "It is not your fault, Lona. Our love is enough." But love was not enough for the villagers. They avoided Lona during festivals and excluded her from rituals meant for women with children. On market days, vendors would pause their conversations, their gossip hanging in the air like a dark cloud as she approached. Some even called her a witch, claiming her inability to conceive was proof of a dark curse upon her soul. One evening, as storm clouds gathered over Kantu, Lona sat alone in her modest hut. Jallo had gone to the village elder's house for a council meeting. Thunder growled in the distance, and the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. Lona stared at the fire, her mind heavy with the cruel words she had endured that day. Then, amidst the storm, she heard it, a voice. "Lona!" Her heart jumped, and she turned toward the sound. It was faint at first, almost swallowed by the rumble of thunder. "Lona!" The voice was clearer now, rich and deep, echoing with an otherworldly cadence. It seemed to come from outside, beyond the walls of her hut. Lona hesitated, fear and curiosity warring within her. Clutching a shawl around her shoulders, she stepped into the storm. The rain soaked her instantly, but she hardly noticed. The voice was leading her toward the ancient Baobab tree at the edge of the village, a tree revered by the villagers as sacred, a dwelling place for the spirits of their ancestors. As she approached the towering tree, its gnarled branches stretched out like arms against the stormy sky. Lightning illuminated its massive trunk, and Lona gasped. She could feel the presence of something powerful, something beyond human comprehension. "Lona," the voice came again, but this time it seemed to come from within her own mind. She fell to her knees before the tree, shivering. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I am a spirit of the ancestors," the voice replied, deep and resonant. "You have been chosen, Lona." "Chosen? Chosen for what?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You are destined for a child," the spirit said. "But the curse upon you must first be broken." Lona's breath caught. "A curse? So it's true?" "Yes," the spirit replied. "But it is not of your making. You carry the burden of an ancient sin, a wound passed down through generations. To break this curse, you must prove your faith and courage." "How?" Lona asked, her heart pounding. "There is a flower," the spirit said. "The Lumina blossom, hidden deep within the forbidden forest. It blooms only under the light of a full moon. Bring it to the Baobab tree, and the curse will be lifted. You will bear the child you long for." Lona's mind raced. The forbidden forest was a place of fear and danger, filled with wild beasts and whispered tales of malevolent spirits. No one who ventured there had ever returned. "But what if I fail?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Then you will remain childless forever," the spirit said. The storm raged on, but Lona could hardly hear it over the pounding of her heart. The voice faded, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the weight of an impossible choice. Should she risk her life to venture into the forbidden forest, or should she accept her fate as the Barren woman of Kantu? Lightning flashed, illuminating the darkened forest beyond the village. Lona's hands clenched into fists. The choice was hers to make, but the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. The storm began to subside, but the storm within Lona's heart had only just begun. The journey begins. The first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the village of Kantu in hues of gold and amber. Lona stood outside her small hut, a simple sack of food slung over her shoulder and a wooden staff clutched tightly in her hand. She cast a final glance at the place she had called home for over a decade, the memories of her life with Jallo swelling in her mind. Jallo was still asleep, unaware of her decision. She had left him a note, scrawled hastily in the light of a flickering lamp. "I must do this, for us. Trust me, and wait for my return." The forbidden forest loomed in the distance, its dark canopy stretching endlessly against the morning sky. It was a place of legends, where no villager dared to tread. But Lona's determination burned brighter than her fear. The journey began on a narrow dirt path that snaked out of the village, cutting through fields of tall grass. The cool morning air was silent, save for the occasional chirp of birds. As the sun climbed higher, Lona's thoughts raced. She clung to the spirit's promise, a child of her own, the end of the ridicule, and a chance to belong once more. By midday, the path led her to the first obstacle, the wide, rushing river. Its waters churned angrily, swollen from last night's storm. The bridge that once spanned it was now a broken, splintered ruin. Lona surveyed the scene, her heart sinking. The current was too strong to swim across, and there was no clear way around. Her gaze fell on a cluster of large rocks jutting from the water. Carefully, she tested the nearest stone with her staff. It held firm, but the gap to the next one was wide. With a deep breath, she stepped onto the rock and leapt to the next, her balance precarious. The river roared beneath her, and the spray of cold water stung her face. Halfway across, her foot slipped on the slick surface of a stone. She stumbled, flailing, and narrowly cut herself with the staff. Her heart thundered in her chest, but she pressed on, reaching the far bank with trembling limbs. As she caught her breath, the faint rustle of leaves made her freeze. She turned, and her blood ran cold. A leopard stood at the edge of the trees, its golden eyes fixed on her. Lona gripped her staff tightly, backing away slowly. The leopard stepped closer, its sleek muscles rippling under its spotted coat. Desperation surged through her. She waved the staff and shouted, trying to appear larger, but the leopard didn't flinch. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the air. Startled, the leopard's ears flicked, and it turned toward the sound. Seizing the opportunity, Lona ran, her feet pounding the earth. She didn't stop until the trees swallowed her, the sound of her own ragged breathing drowning out all else. Hours passed, and hunger gnawed at her. She sat beneath a towering tree, pulling a small piece of dried fruit from her sack. As she ate, the silence of the forest grew heavy. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made her flinch. By the time she reached the riverbank again, the sun was low in the sky. To her surprise, an old woman sat there, her bent figure wrapped in a tattered shawl. A small fire crackled beside her, and the smell of roasted fish wafted through the air. "Come closer, child," the woman said, her voice creaking like an old door. Lona hesitated, then approached cautiously. The woman's face was lined with age, her eyes sharp and knowing. "You seek the Lumina blossom," the woman said before Lona could speak. Lona's eyes widened. "How do you know?" "I know many things," the woman replied. "But hear this, the flower you seek lies at the heart of the forbidden forest. It is not easily taken." "What do you mean?" Lona asked. "It is guarded by a spirit," the old woman said. "A spirit that demands a great sacrifice from those who wish to take it. Many have tried, none have returned." Lona swallowed hard. "What kind of sacrifice?" The woman shook her head. That is for you to discover. But remember, child, not all sacrifices are of the flesh. Some are of the heart. The cryptic warning hung heavy in the air. The woman gestured to the fire, offering Lona a piece of fish. Grateful, Lona accepted and ate in silence. When she looked up again, the woman was gone, as if she had vanished into the forest. Night fell as Lona pressed onward, the shadows of the forest growing darker and more menacing. The trees seemed to close in around her, their twisted branches reaching like skeletal fingers. The air grew cold, and an eerie stillness settled over the forest. Then she heard it, whispers. They were faint at first, like the rustle of leaves in the wind. But as she moved deeper into the forest, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They seemed to come from all directions, surrounding her. Lona. She spun around, her staff raised. Who's there? The whispers didn't answer, but she could feel their presence. Her skin prickled, and her heart pounded in her chest. Then she saw them, glowing eyes in the darkness. Dozens of them, staring at her from the shadows. Her breath caught, and she gripped her staff tighter. The whispers grew louder, their cadence hypnotic and unnerving. The eyes moved closer, their glow intensifying. Lona stood frozen, her mind racing. She knew the forbidden forest was dangerous, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. The glowing eyes surrounded her, and the whispers became a deafening chorus. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice trembling. The whispers stopped. Silence fell, heavy and oppressive. Then, from the darkness, a deep voice spoke. "You seek the flower," it said, its tone both commanding and otherworldly. "But to take it, you must prove yourself worthy." The eyes closed in, and the darkness seemed to swallow her whole. The spirit of the forest. The darkness pressed in around Lona, her breathing shallow as the glowing eyes in the forest formed a circle. The deep, otherworldly voice echoed once more, vibrating through her very bones. "You who trespass in my domain, why have you come?" A figure emerged from the shadows, its form ethereal and fluid, as if made of shimmering light and mist. It had no face, but its presence was overwhelming. The glow of its body shifted like the auroras Lona had only heard of in stories, casting an eerie radiance across the forest floor. Lona gripped her staff, forcing herself to stand tall despite her trembling limbs. "I seek the Lumina blossom," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "For what purpose?" the spirit demanded, its voice resonant and cold. "To break a curse," Lona replied. "The spirit of the ancestors sent me." The figure tilted its head, as if considering her words. "The Lumina blossom is no simple flower. Its power is sacred, its presence a gift. Yet you come seeking it for your selfish desires." Lona flinched. "It's not selfish. I've been called cursed, ridiculed, and shunned by my people. I only want to." "To what?" the spirit interrupted, its voice cutting through her like a blade. "To prove your worth to those who would not see it otherwise. To bend nature's will to your own longing." Lona's heart pounded, her hands tightening around her staff. "I want to belong," she said quietly. "I want to end my suffering. If that's selfish, so be it." The spirit loomed closer, its faceless form radiating a cold, penetrating light. "Your desires are meaningless unless you can prove your worth. To claim the Lumina blossom, you must pass 3 trials. Succeed, and the flower is yours. Fail, and you will join the lost souls who dared to tread this path before you." Lona swallowed hard. "I'll do it." The spirit raised an arm, its form dissolving momentarily into a cascade of glowing particles before reforming. "The first trial, find courage in darkness. Fear will test you, but you must not falter." Without warning, the spirit disappeared, and the forest plunged into pitch-black darkness. The glow of the spirit and the faint moonlight vanished entirely, leaving Lona in an oppressive void. She gripped her staff, her breath quick and shallow. The whispers began again, louder this time, echoing in her ears like a cacophony of voices. Shadows seemed to move around her, and her imagination conjured shapes of beasts with gaping jaws and sharp claws. "You're not real," she muttered, her voice shaking. "You're not real." The whispers grew into roars, and something brushed against her leg. She yelped and stumbled back, her heart racing. But then she stopped, forcing herself to breathe deeply. Her eyes were useless in the darkness, but she remembered the feel of the wooden staff in her hands, the steady beat of her heart. "I am not afraid of you," she said, her voice louder now, cutting through the chaos. The whispers stopped abruptly, and the darkness lifted. The forest reappeared, bathed in a faint silver glow. The spirit's form materialized before her. "You have found courage in darkness," it said, its tone neutral. "But courage alone is not enough. The second trial awaits." The ground beneath Lona shifted, and she found herself in a different part of the forest, near a thicket of bushes. A soft whimper caught her attention. She turned to see a small animal, a young fawn, caught in a hunter's snare. Its legs were tangled in the cruel ropes, and its eyes glistened with fear. Lona approached cautiously, her heart aching at the sight. She knelt by the fawn, her hands trembling as she worked to untangle the ropes. The animal flinched but didn't struggle. As she freed it, a low growl sounded behind her. She turned to see a pack of wolves emerging from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with hunger. Lona's instincts screamed at her to run, but she stood her ground. Raising her staff, she waved it at the wolves, shouting and stomping to make herself appear larger. The wolves hesitated, their growls deepening, but they didn't advance. The fawn, now free, stumbled to its feet and darted into the forest. Lona backed away slowly, her heart hammering as the wolves finally retreated into the darkness. When she was alone again, the spirit reappeared. "You have shown selflessness," it said. "But one trial remains." The forest shifted once more, and Lona found herself standing before a massive, ancient tree. Its bark was silver, and its roots twisted into the ground like the veins of a giant. The spirit floated before her. "For the final trial," it said, "you must reveal your greatest truth. Speak it aloud, and do not hide." Lona hesitated, her chest tightening. "What do you mean?" "Your heart holds the truth you fear to admit, even to yourself," the spirit replied. "Only by revealing it can you prove your worth." Lona's hands trembled. She thought of the years of ridicule, the whispers, and the pain. She thought of Jallo, who had always been kind and patient, even as she felt herself drowning in shame. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to speak. I feel like I'm nothing," she said, her voice breaking. "I've tried to be strong, to endure the scorn of my people, but it's not enough. I've spent years believing that if I could just have a child, I'd finally be seen as worthy, as whole. But now I realize, it's not about them. I want this child for me. To feel like I have a purpose. To feel like I matter." The words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Lona's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. The spirit was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke. "You have faced your fears, shown compassion, and revealed the truth of your heart. You are worthy." The tree before Lona began to glow, its bark shimmering as it split open to reveal a single flower. The Lumina blossom. Its petals sparkled like captured starlight, and its fragrance filled the air with a sense of peace. Lona reached out, her fingers brushing the soft petals. As she plucked the flower, the spirit's voice echoed once more. "The Lumina blossom holds great power, but its gift is not without a price. Be prepared to pay it, for the choice you make will shape your destiny." The forest fell silent, and the spirit disappeared, leaving Lona alone with the radiant flower in her hands. Her heart swelled with hope, but the spirit's warning lingered, casting a shadow over her triumph, the child of miracles. The journey back to Kanto was long, but Lona carried a newfound strength within her. The lumina blossom, tucked carefully in her sack, seemed to radiate a soft light that guided her steps. As she approached the village, the familiar sight of its simple huts and bustling market filled her with a mix of relief and apprehension. The villagers' eyes widened as they saw her emerge from the forest. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and some stepped back as if her presence carried an otherworldly power. "She went into the forbidden forest," one muttered. "And returned alive," another added, awe and fear lacing their voice. Lona ignored their murmurs and made her way to the sacred Baobab tree. The storm had left the ground damp, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and leaves. She knelt before the ancient trunk, the voice of the ancestors echoing in her memory. She crushed the lumina blossom as instructed, mixing its radiant petals with water from a nearby stream. The concoction shimmered like liquid moonlight. Closing her eyes, Lona drank it in one long, deliberate gulp. The taste was both sweet and bitter, like honey tinged with ash. For days, nothing happened. Lona carried on with her life, enduring the same cold glances and whispered insults from the villagers. She began to doubt the spirit's promise, wondering if the trials and her sacrifice had been in vain. But then, one morning, Lona woke with an unfamiliar sensation, a warmth spreading through her abdomen, a flicker of life where there had once been only emptiness. Weeks later, her suspicion was confirmed. The village healer, an old woman with keen eyes, placed a hand on Lona's belly and gasped. "You are with child," she whispered, her voice trembling. The news spread like wildfire through Kanto. The villagers, who once mocked and shunned her, now looked at her with wide eyes and hushed voices. "It's a miracle," they said. "The Barren woman has been blessed." Some came to her hut bearing gifts, fruit, cloth, and charms for the unborn child. Others approached cautiously, as if her very presence had become sacred. Jallo, overjoyed, wept openly when Lona told him. He embraced her, whispering, "I always knew you were meant for greatness." As the months passed, Lona felt the child growing within her. Her belly swelled, and her heart brimmed with hope. She began to dream of the child, dreams filled with light and laughter, where a little girl with piercing eyes ran through fields of flowers. The night of the birth arrived with the fury of a storm. Rain lashed against the thatched roof of their hut, and thunder roared across the sky. Lona's labor was long and grueling, but Jallo stayed by her side, holding her hand and murmuring words of encouragement. Finally, with one last agonizing push, the cries of a newborn filled the air. The midwife held up a baby girl, her tiny body sleek with rain-scented air and her cries strong and clear. "She's beautiful," Jallo said, tears streaming down his face. But as the midwife cleaned the child, her hands stilled. "Look," she said, her voice tinged with awe. On the baby's forehead was a faint, intricate mark resembling the lumina blossom. Its shape seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, as if infused with the same ethereal energy Lona had seen in the forbidden forest. The villagers, drawn by the storm and the news of the birth, gathered outside the hut. When Jallo emerged to announce the arrival of their daughter, Nia, the crowd erupted into cheers. But when they saw the mark on her forehead, the cheers turned to stunned silence. "She's not an ordinary child," one elder whispered, his eyes narrowing. "She bears the mark of the spirit," another murmured. Strange events began to unfold as Nia grew. Animals, both wild and tame, gathered near the family's home, as if drawn to her presence. Birds perched on the roof, their songs more melodious than ever. A wounded deer appeared one morning, and as Nia touched its broken leg, it seemed to heal before their eyes. The villagers watched in awe and unease. Some began to revere Nia, bringing her offerings and bowing in her presence. Others whispered darkly about her origins, their fear of the unknown turning into suspicion. One evening, as Lona cradled Nia by the fire, an elderly woman approached their hut. Her face was lined with age, and her eyes gleamed with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "She is not just a child," the woman said, her voice low. "She is a spirit in human form. Be careful, Lona. Spirits are powerful, but their ways are not our ways." Lona's heart clenched. She looked down at her daughter, whose innocent eyes sparkled with a light that seemed to hold the mysteries of the universe. The storm outside rumbled again, and Lona knew the peace they had found was fragile. The villagers all could easily turn to fear, and she would do anything to protect her child. As the rain poured outside, Lona stared into the flames, the elderly woman's warning echoing in her mind. What price had she truly paid for this miracle? And what future awaited her daughter, the child of miracles? Nia's gift. Nia grew quickly, her presence filling the once quiet hut with joy and wonder. By the time she could walk, her gifts were impossible to ignore. Animals flocked to her as if she were a beacon, their natural fear replaced with calm curiosity. Birds perched on her shoulders, and even the wildest creatures of the forest approached her without hesitation. But it wasn't just animals that were drawn to her. People came too, seeking her touch and the inexplicable power she seemed to wield. One day, a young boy was brought to Lona's home, his face pale and his breath shallow. He had fallen ill with a fever that the village healer couldn't cure. Nia, barely 5 years old, approached him with a calmness far beyond her years. She placed her tiny hand on the boy's forehead, her eyes glowing faintly as she hummed an unfamiliar tune. Within moments, the boy's fever broke, his cheeks flushed with color. "She's a miracle," the boy's mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "A blessing from the spirits." Word of Nia's abilities spread, and soon, villagers came in droves, seeking her help. She healed the sick, mended broken limbs, and even calmed a panicked ox that had nearly trampled a farmer. But not everyone was awed by her gifts. Some began to whisper behind closed doors, their awe turning into suspicion. "She's no ordinary child," a woman muttered during a market day. "No one should have that much power." "What if she's a witch?" another said. "Her mother went to the forbidden forest. Who knows what she brought back with her?" These whispers reached Lona, but she refused to let them disturb her. Nia was her daughter, her miracle, and she would protect her at all costs. Conflict among the villagers. The division in the village deepened when tragedy struck the chief's family. His only son, a boy of 12, fell gravely ill. The healers tried every remedy they knew, but his condition worsened with each passing day. The chief, a proud and pragmatic man, refused to believe in superstition or miracles, dismissing Nia as a child with strange luck. But as his son's life hung by a thread, desperation drove him to Lona's door. "Please," he said, his voice heavy with grief. "If your daughter can save my son, I will owe you everything." Nia stepped forward, her expression solemn. Without a word, she entered the chief's home and knelt beside the boy. She placed her hands on his chest, her eyes glowing once more. The boy's labored breathing steadied, and his body relaxed as the fever lifted. The chief was overwhelmed. He knelt before Nia, bowing his head. "You are a blessing to this village," he declared. The villagers who had doubted her fell silent, their skepticism giving way to reverence. They began to call her Nia the Blessed, and her fame grew beyond Kantu, attracting visitors from neighboring villages. Plotting in the shadows. Despite the chief's public endorsement, not everyone welcomed Nia's gift. Among the village elders, a group of 4 men and women gathered in secret. They were wary of change, believing Nia's power threatened the balance of their traditions. "She's too young to wield such power," one elder said, his tone grave. "And if she turns against us," another added. "What then?" Who will protect us from her? The eldest among them, a stern woman named Moku, spoke with finality. We must act before it's too late. The longer she remains, the more dangerous she becomes. They began to sow seeds of doubt among the villagers, reviving the whispers of witchcraft. Strange occurrences, crops failing in one part of the village, a sudden rise in wild animal sightings, were blamed on Nia. She may heal, but at what cost, they murmured. A mysterious stranger arrives. One evening, as the village gathered for a celebration of the harvest, a stranger appeared at the edge of the crowd. He was tall and cloaked in dark robes, his face obscured by a hood. The villagers fell silent as he approached, his presence commanding attention. He stopped before the chief, bowing slightly. I have traveled far to reach this village, the stranger said, his voice smooth and deliberate. I come seeking the child with the mark of the Lumina blossom. The chief frowned, his protective instincts flaring. Why do you seek her? The stranger's gaze shifted to Nia, who stood by Lona's side, her eyes wide with curiosity. Because I know the truth about her origins. She is not what she seems. The crowd erupted in murmurs, tension thick in the air. Lona stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Nia's shoulder. She is my daughter, Lona said firmly. Whatever you think you know, it doesn't change that. The stranger's gaze softened, but his words remained enigmatic. Her destiny is far greater than you can imagine. But it is not without peril. If you wish to protect her, you must understand what she truly is. The chief, sensing the rising unease among the villagers, raised a hand for silence. Speak plainly, he said. What is this child to you? The stranger hesitated, then pulled back his hood, revealing a face lined with age and wisdom. His eyes glowed faintly, reminiscent of the spirit Lona had encountered in the forbidden forest. She is the bridge between worlds, he said. A being born of human and spirit, destined to either save or destroy all she touches. The villagers gasped, and the tension in the air grew unbearable. Lona's heart pounded as she tightened her hold on Nia. What do you mean? She demanded. What is the price I have paid? The stranger's glowing eyes fixed on her, his expression both sorrowful and reverent. The price is yet to be revealed. But it is not hers to pay, it is yours. Before anyone could react, the stranger turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving behind a village gripped by fear, awe, and uncertainty. Lona held Nia close as the storm of whispers began anew, the words of the stranger echoing in her mind. What was her daughter's destiny? And what sacrifice would she be forced to make to protect her? Betrayal and sacrifice. The days following the stranger's visit were tense. Nia's powers continued to both awe and unsettle the villagers. While many viewed her as a blessing, others whispered of misfortune tied to her presence. Livestock falling ill, crops withering in a remote field, or sudden storms were blamed on her, fueling suspicion. Lona grew increasingly protective, rarely letting Nia out of her sight. She knew the villagers' fears could turn dangerous, especially with the elders' growing influence. A hidden plot. One evening, as Lona gathered water from the stream near the village, she overheard voices in the dense foliage. She froze, her heart sinking as she recognized the stern voice of Elder Moko. She's too powerful, Moko said. Her gifts bring imbalance. The crops fail because of her, the animals act unnaturally. The spirits are displeased. Another elder hesitated. But what can we do? The chief forbade any harm to her. We don't need to harm her, Moko replied. Her power lies in her mark and her hair. We only need to sever her connection to the spirits. Lona's blood ran cold. Cutting Nia's hair, the source of her connection to the flower's magic, could sever her abilities or worse, harm her soul. Lona clutched her staff tightly, her mind racing. She slipped away unnoticed and hurried back to their hut, her fear solidifying into determination. She would protect Nia at all cost, even if it meant confronting the entire village. The stranger returns. That night, as Lona sat by the fire, holding Nia close, the air grew heavy, and the flames flickered. The stranger appeared again, stepping through the doorway as if materializing from the shadows. "Why are you here?" Lona demanded, her voice trembling with both anger and desperation. The stranger's glowing eyes softened. "To warn you. The elders' plan will disrupt the balance not just of this village, but of the entire valley." "What balance?" Lona asked, her patience fraying. "Nia's life is tied to the magic of the Lumina blossom," the stranger explained. "She is more than a child, she is a vessel of the forest power. The flower's energy flows through her. If her connection is severed, it will unleash chaos, not just here, but in the natural world." Lona's heart pounded. "What can I do?" The stranger's expression grew somber. "The spirits have offered a way to protect her. But it requires the greatest sacrifice." Lona's breath caught. "What sacrifice?" "Your life," the stranger said plainly. "You gave her life through the magic of the flower. Now, you must give her protection through the same magic. The spirits will take you, ensuring she is safe and her powers remain intact. But you will not return." The weight of his words crushed Lona. She glanced at Nia, who sat quietly, tracing patterns in the dirt with her finger. Her daughter was everything she had ever wanted, the light in her once dark world. The elders' betrayal. Before Lona could decide, chaos erupted. A group of villagers, led by Elder Moku, stormed into the hut. Moku held a ceremonial blade, its edge gleaming in the firelight. "We mean no harm," Moku said, her voice cold. "But the girl's power must be contained before it destroys us all." Lona stepped in front of Nia, her staff raised. "You'll have to go through me first." The villagers hesitated, but Moku's resolve didn't waver. She gestured to the others, and they closed in. "Nia, run!" Lona shouted. The little girl bolted for the back door, but a villager blocked her path. Lona fought fiercely, using her staff to keep them at bay. But the numbers overwhelmed her, and they wrested the staff from her grasp. Moku approached Nia, blade in hand, and grabbed a lock of her hair. Nia screamed, her eyes glowing brightly as an unseen force pushed the elder back. The villagers stumbled, fear flickering across their faces. The glow intensified, and the stranger reappeared, his voice booming. "Enough!" The villagers froze as he stepped forward. His presence seemed larger, more imposing, as if the entire forest stood with him. "This child is not yours to harm," he said. "The spirits will not forgive this trespass." Moku, trembling but defiant, pointed the blade at him. "Then what do we do?" "Let her powers destroy us all." "The spirits have spoken," the stranger replied. "The price will be paid." He turned to Lona, his gaze heavy with meaning. Lona stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Take me. Protect my daughter, and leave her in peace." The villagers gasped, and Jallo, who had rushed to the scene, cried out, "No, Lona. There must be another way." "There isn't," Lona said, turning to him. "This is my choice. For Nia. The sacrifice." The stranger extended a hand to Lona. "Are you certain?" "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "I would give anything for her." The air grew heavy, the fire dimming as a wind swept through the hut. The stranger's form began to shift, his glowing body expanding into a swirl of light and shadow. The villagers stepped back, shielding their eyes as the light engulfed Lona. She turned to Nia, kneeling to hold her one last time. "Be strong, my little flower," she whispered, brushing a tear from Nia's cheek. "Use your gifts wisely. Remember, I will always love you. Nia clung to her, sobbing, but the light pulled Lona away. Her form faded into the glow, which then dissipated into the night, leaving the hut eerily silent. Aftermath. The villagers, awestruck and shaken, slowly dispersed, their anger replaced with guilt and sorrow. Jallo held Nia tightly, his tears falling freely. The next morning, the chief gathered the village to honor Lona's sacrifice. They built a shrine near the Baobab tree, where her memory would be preserved for generations. Nia, though heartbroken, seemed to grow even stronger. She embraced her gifts, healing the sick and helping the village rebuild its faith in harmony with the spirits. But as she stared at the Baobab tree one evening, her mother's final words echoed in her mind. Lona had given everything for her, and Nia vowed to ensure her sacrifice was never in vain. Yet, in the shadows of the forest, the stranger watched silently, his glowing eyes filled with both sorrow and hope. The story was not over, and Nia's journey had only just begun. Legacy of Lona. A new era for Kantu. Years passed, and Nia grew into a figure of strength and compassion. Under her guidance, the village of Kantu flourished in ways it had never before imagined. The once divided villagers, united by Lona's sacrifice and Nia's tireless efforts, began to see the world with new eyes that valued harmony and balance over fear and suspicion. Nia, now a young woman, used her gifts wisely. She healed the sick, taught the villagers sustainable ways to tend their crops, and mediated conflicts with a wisdom far beyond her years. Her connection to the spirits of the forest remained strong, and animals still gathered near her, their presence a constant reminder of the bond between nature and humanity. The villagers, once burdened by superstition and fear, learned to embrace Nia's powers as a blessing. They stopped seeing her as a child of mystery and began to see her as their leader, a bridge between their world and the spirits. Honoring Lona. The shrine near the Baobab tree became a sacred site, a place where villagers came to reflect on Lona's sacrifice. Crafted from smooth stone and adorned with carvings of the Lumina blossom, the shrine stood as a testament to her courage and love. Stories of Lona's journey into the forbidden forest and her selfless act of offering herself to the spirits were passed down through generations. Around the fire, elders told these tales to children, reminding them of the power of love, the importance of selflessness, and the strength found in facing one's fears. She gave everything for her child, they would say. And through her sacrifice, she taught us what it means to truly live. Nia often visited the shrine, sitting quietly beneath the Baobab tree. Though her heart still ached for her mother, she felt a deep connection to Lona's spirit, as if her presence lingered in the rustling leaves and the warm breeze. The blooming of the Baobab tree. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Nia sat before the shrine. Her fingers traced the carvings of the Lumina blossom as she spoke softly. "Mother, I hope I've made you proud," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've tried to live by the lessons you taught me, to use my gifts for good and to protect those who need it. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten." As she sat in silence, the air around her grew still. The faint glow of fireflies began to dance among the roots of the Baobab tree. Suddenly, a soft light emanated from the tree itself. Nia looked up, her breath catching in her throat. The Baobab tree, ancient and revered, had begun to bloom. Radiant flowers, their petals shimmering like the Lumina blossom, burst forth from the branches. Their light illuminated the shrine and the surrounding forest, casting a warm, ethereal glow. The villagers, drawn by the sight, gathered around the tree in awe. Some wept, while others knelt in reverence. "The spirits have blessed us," an elder whispered. "Lona's love continues to guide us." The flowers were unlike anything they had ever seen, a symbol of hope and renewal. It was said that their glow could be seen from neighboring villages, drawing travelers who came to witness the miracle and hear the story of Lona and Nia. A promise fulfilled. As the villagers marveled at the tree, Nia stood before the shrine, her hand resting on its smooth surface. She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of her mother's spirit surrounding her. "I promise to continue your legacy," she whispered. "To protect this village, to honor the spirits, and to ensure your sacrifice was not in vain." The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying her words into the night. For a moment, she thought she heard her mother's voice, soft and comforting. "I am always with you, my little flower." Nia smiled through her tears, her heart filled with both sorrow and joy. She turned to face the villagers, who looked to her with unwavering trust and admiration. "This tree is a reminder," Nia said, her voice clear and strong, "that love and sacrifice can change the world. Let us never forget." The eternal legend. As the years passed, the story of Lona and Nia became a cherished legend, told around fires and inscribed in the annals of Kanto's history. The blooming Baobab tree became a pilgrimage site, its radiant flowers a symbol of hope, renewal, and the enduring power of love. Nia continued to lead with wisdom and compassion, her mother's lessons guiding her every step. She ensured that the bond between the villagers and the spirits of the forest remained unbroken, fostering harmony and prosperity for generations to come. And so, under the watchful glow of the Baobab tree, Kanto thrived, its people forever connected by the legacy of a woman who had given everything for love and a child who carried that love into the future. The tree bloomed every year, its flowers lighting up the forest like a constellation, reminding all who saw it that even in the darkest times, hope and love could shine brightly. And in the whispers of the wind, the villagers would say they could still hear Lona's voice, a gentle reminder that her spirit would always watch over them.